Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. Guys, man, we have had so many amazing guests. And just in the past, gosh, we've been doing this for over 2 years, and the guests we have had on have just been phenomenal. And we have two amazing guests who's going to be on the show with us today. And before we start, I want to say thank you to our friend Jeff, because it's Jeff that connected us. And I just want to say thank you. It's people like you, Jeff, who help this thing continue to grow, as well as our listeners and our guests, right? Because you get out there networking and you know people and you hear stories, and so just thank you so much to Jeff and so many other people for the connections that you guys make for us here on the other side of addiction. Greatly appreciate it. So today, guys, we got a really cool topic, and we're going to be talking about how addicts have more potential than what they think. And I really love this topic because when I was at the Other Side Academy a couple months ago at an event, I was talking to a good friend who works there, and he was telling me it's so cool to see a lot of their students, I guess, that go through there as they are going through their recovery journey, start realizing talents that they have and didn't even know that they had them. So I really, really like this because all of us, not just addicts, all of us have a lot more potential than what we really think. What scares us away from moving forward and grasping that potential is our fear, right? When my wife was going through her recovery, she had the fear of never being able to touch a drop of alcohol again at concerts, when she's in Wendover. That was scary for her, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it would be scary for me if someone told me I could not ever have ice cream the rest of my life. It's like, you got to be kidding me. So again, it's that fear. So we're going to get this show started. Drew and Linda Wilson, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your morning to spend it here with me.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. When we were talking before the show, and I want to hear both your guys' input on this. What had you come up? And I believe it was Linda that brought this up. So I'm going to have Linda speak on this first, that addicts have more potential than what they think. I mean, why did you come up with that message?
Um, I think that's just been something big. So right off the bat, I'll start with I'm a sober coach for Addict to Athlete, the Salt Lake chapter. And once I found Addict to Athlete, we don't call ourselves addicts, we are athletes. And once I let go of that term, like an addict, because it's negative, there's a negative spin on it. I was able to see my potential, and like telling myself I was an athlete, I found that I'm so many other things as well, rather than just an addict and just a junkie and the things that we've been told our whole lives when we're in addiction.
And I really love that because when I used to go to AA meetings with my wife, one thing that really, really bugged me is when she'd get up and say, "Hi, my name is Janan and I'm an alcoholic." I'm like, why are you labeling yourself?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And that's how you were looking at it, right? You'd rather be labeled as an athlete than
Yes.
something in a negative way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. And then you can start to recognize that you're so many other things as well, and positive things, because I think we're so used to talking to ourselves negatively and that self-talk, but we're so much more than that.
Well, and like you said too, Linda, you get a lot of negative stuff being thrown at you by other individuals, right? Family and friends. And I'm just as guilty. I threw a lot of negative stuff at my wife when she was going through the depths of her addiction, not realizing I was doing it, right? Thinking I'm helping,
Uh-huh.
when
Yeah.
really I was just pouring more fuel on the fire.
Yeah, because really you're scared, right? You have fear, and you don't mean to do that. You don't mean
Right.
to. Yeah.
Drew, what about yourself?
Um, well, as far as addicts or people in recovery being or having more potential than they think, I mean, first of all, yeah, the idea of just referring to myself as an addict or alcoholic I don't love. I think it's a better spin if you say recovering addict or recovering alcoholic, because that I can wear as kind of a badge of honor. That is something people respect. Is I'm in recovery, um, and I'm making my life better. But um, yeah, I like that Linda brought up that topic of people in recovery being uh, capable of so much more than they realize. Because I'm someone that I was an opiate addict, heroin, ended up in prison for a few years, and through those years, and I think this applies to anyone, not just people that have struggled with substance abuse, but a lot of people get trapped in this headspace of I can't do this and I can't do that for whatever reason, because they believed things along the way that they heard or they were told without really diving a little deeper into it. Like I always believed I couldn't buy a home. I believed that I wasn't ever going to get into physical fitness, or that I couldn't change my diet, or get a real estate license, or all these different things I just thought I couldn't do. And then, one day that bubble just kind of got burst, and I was like, oh, whoa, I just did something I didn't think I could do. What else did I lie to myself about? And that's when things started kind of picking up.
And for both of you guys, you probably realized this as you had been clean for a while, right? And USARA, we are big supporters of USARA downtown, and we had them on the show, and we were talking about changing the language, and they like to use "I'm in long-term recovery," which I love that one, and that's how my wife says it now.
Mhm.
However, it takes time for everything to get out of your system, right? And your brain to start firing properly. Is that when you guys really started seeing the bubble burst for the first time and these light bulbs started coming on, going, "Oh my gosh, I am so much better than what I ever thought I was, and I can do whatever it is I want to do."
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, it was when I found movement, when I started running and rock climbing, um, was like really when things clicked for me that I can accomplish things and I can do so much more than I've ever thought before.
I love
For
it.
me, it's been about kind of hanging in there through some of the stagnant periods, because my growth has kind of happened in spurts. I've gone through these little phases where I just jump ahead, and then for a little bit I just kind of like and it's taken time to develop this balance of continual growth and making those periods of stagnation a little shorter, and just like little growth daily, instead of trying to take these huge leaps and want to get to the finish line really quickly in true, addict fashion. I
Yeah.
want it now. And so, yeah, it takes practice.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I'm coming up on 10 years of sobriety, and I'm still like figuring things out and learning and like develop, and that should never stop, really. There is no finish line.
Amen.
That's what I've had
Amen.
to realize, is like, if there's a finish line, if you think you've reached the finish line, then you're in trouble.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that's when you end up standing in the stagnant water, right? And
Right.
then it's those negative thoughts. My wife would be sober for 30, 60 days. And of course, she couldn't hold a job because, she was drinking all the time, and she'd sit home and basically standing in the stagnant water. And that literally is the devil's playground, in my belief, right? All of a sudden, those negative thoughts started kicking in her head again. And before she realized it, she told herself what a worthless piece of crap she was, and goes right back into the addiction again.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then you get in the shame and then you're stuck in the shame and that just keeps you down.
Yeah. And I love, Drew, that you said that there is no finish line, because I think our listeners have heard me say that many, many times on the show, because I'm a firm believer of it. Goals, yes, you can set a goal and reach a goal and set another one, right? You can constantly change goals. However, when it comes to bettering yourself and growing, yeah, I think the only end is the day that God calls us home. And again, that's just how I feel. And it sounds like you guys are feeling that same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what we found. And that's, I don't know, it's become part of the fun for me and part of the journey is like, what's next? Like, we've reached these goals. Now it's time to put together a new set of goals and go after that.
Yeah. And I love how you said that instead of jumping forward, like, right. I mean, because us as human beings, when we want something, we want that satisfaction like right now, right? We're
Yeah.
wanting to put our hands on it, we're wanting to taste it. I mean, I was terrible at that, right? When I wanted something, man, I was doing everything I possibly could to bring it in as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And what's crazy is in the past almost 2.5 years since I've started doing this podcast and this show and doing different things, even just starting the podcast, I realized I'm just going to let go of the flipping wheel. And as long as I'm moving my feet forward, whether it's a shuffle or whether it's one little teeny baby step, I'm moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to see how things play out, because every time I tried to force something, it didn't go the way I wanted it to go anyway. So what have I got to lose, right? I
Yeah.
might as well just start moving and hope that something happens. And I would say, with my experience in the last 2.5 years, 98, if not 99% of the time, it happens the way that you picture it in your head. It may not be as quick, but it still happens. And that's what matters.
Yeah, one of my
Yeah.
favorite things I've heard along the way is someone said once, it takes 1 year to get 1 year of recovery. It takes 5 years to get 5 years. You can't get a year in 30 days, no matter how bad you want it. There'll be these people. I worked in the recovery treatment or the substance abuse treatment industry for 7 years, and time and time again, you'd see these people get out of treatment and they're like, well, how come I don't have my kids back? Why don't I have an apartment yet? Or I'm not making $100,000 a year. Like, you've been sober 60 days, man. Like most people aren't making that sober 10 years.
Right.
So it takes what it takes. You hiked 50 miles into the woods, you got to hike 50 miles back out.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's a skill to learn that and accept that. It takes time, and you kind of have to re-accept it and relearn it several
Yeah.
times. Well,
Yeah. I think part of that too is just learning to be okay with the journey. And there's always a lesson in the journey, right? Like we don't just get to where we're going and learn all this wisdom. We learn that going through the hard times and the journey getting there.
Yeah. Well, the journey is actually, if you stop and think about it, the journey is actually the most amazing part about all of it, right? Because
Oh
and
yeah.
and I don't know if you can look at it both ways, right? So when when people fall into addiction, whatever the addiction may be, again, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, right? It slowly draws you in without you realize it. And then by the time you do, you're in deep. And
Yeah.
mhm.
it is a struggle to get out. It's the same thing being on that other side, right? Because I remember my wife saying, I'll never see our grandkids again. I'm never going to have a job again. You know, I'm never going to have my sisters back in my life. It's like, you don't know that. As
Yeah.
long as you continue to work towards, I mean, you burned a lot of bridges, absolutely. However, bridges can be rebuilt, the ones that are supposed to be rebuilt. There
Oh
are
yeah.
some that you finally go, you know what? This is one that's supposed to stay down, and I'm just going to leave it down. I'll build another one over here. And as
Mhm.
long as you keep that in your mind, and like you said, Drew, it's that process, it's that growth, just taking those little baby steps. And then one day, all of a sudden, you go back and you're like, oh my gosh, I have so many things back that I thought I lost for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it is like just in one day it hits you that all of a sudden you have so much and that gratitude just hits you.
Yeah.
And I still get it. I still have these moments. I'll be sitting with my family and I'm welcome there. And and I'll have these moments of like, gosh, I can't believe this, like even almost 10 years down the road. And I hope I never really lose that, that sense of like, this is amazing. I can't believe I get to do this after what I've done, that I'm back here.
Yeah.
And it takes time, it takes time to get everything back. And if you look at it as, it's going to take forever, and it's going to take this amount of time, you're going to overwhelm yourself. And that's why they say one day at a time, right? It sounds like a cliche, but it's said a lot for a reason. It's so important to just focus on today and like reaching your goals for the day. And then accumulatively, those days will bring you to your larger goal.
Yeah. Well, and people will start seeing who you are as individuals, right? I mean, they start seeing that there's a new you, and you even see a new you, right? I mean, that's the whole blessing, I think, with a lot of it. Yeah, it's that journey. I mean, Linda touched on it. It's that, definitely that journey, because my good friend Nicholas Smith, who and him and Ryan Morse that do A Tribe of Giants, they share on their show quite a bit. you know, Negativity is actually some of the best things that can happen to us, right? And tragedy and traumas, because it teaches us, it makes us stronger, it puts our lives in a whole different level. And that's what I love doing that's why I love doing these shows. One of my guests that was on the show a week ago, and her show came out this week, she did a testimonial video, and my gosh, she brought tears to my eyes. And it's people like yourselves and her and so many of our guests that I'm just so inspired. I mean, I am honored every single week to get on a show with people like you guys, or let me change that, like with individuals like you guys, and just be inspired, because you guys understand life, because a lot of us don't experience what you guys have experienced, right? We've not gone to prison. We've not lived on the streets. We've not had to live our life to where we had to have something to keep us going on a daily basis. And it's something that's harmful. And then when that bubble pops, as we mentioned earlier, and you start seeing life in a whole different way, in my eyes, you guys are the angels that are walking amongst us, holding your hand out, helping other individuals in their journey and helping them pop that bubble and going, man, you guys are worth a heck of a lot more than what you think you are, right? Which pretty much that's what we talked about at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Every time you talk, I just get the chills. Like I almost have the chills the whole time when
Oh, well, I hope it's because you're not cold.
No, it's not. It's because you're so inspirational, and I love that. And I can feel your passion about what you do.
Thank you.
Here's my favorite thing about your show, Al. I worked in the treatment industry for 7 years, and you and I never connected somehow. Um, it wasn't until I left and got into real estate and some networking stuff, that's when I heard about you, which means that you are connecting and touching people outside of that kind of treatment recovery world as well, which is a big deal, because I've been on several podcasts, treatment podcasts, or I mean substance abuse treatment and stuff like that, and recovery podcasts, and they're all pretty known within that world, but I think you're communicating with people outside of that world as well, who need to hear stuff like this, that people with addictions can get better and can do great things, and kind of maybe breaking down those stigmas, that we hear about a lot. And so I appreciate that. It's important for people to hear stuff like that addiction isn't all just what you see on TV and movies. People get better and people do great things.
Absolutely. And thank you to the both of you. Thank you so much. I mean, Linda's talking about goosebumps. Yeah, if you want to call it chicken skin, I'm full of chicken skin right now. Thank you for your kind words. And, you know, I hope that's how it is going, right? I mean, yeah, we want to give a platform for people to use their voice, and you nailed it, Drew. It's the stigma. Some of the events that I've gone to, and I don't know if you've heard me talk on the show about a neighborhood protest that my wife and I went to last summer, and literally I was in awe. I was shocked of how people looked at individuals in the recovery world. And this was a sober living. These are people who are working their butts off to make a change in their life, and they're still being looked at like they're garbage on the side of the road. It was so bad. It was triggering my wife. She had to leave. She's like, I got to go back to the truck. I can't listen to this because it was triggering her so bad. And I mean, almost, I felt bad for the people, really, and also I could understand because it's that fear of not knowing, right? And that's what we want to do on this show is we want to get rid of that stigma
Mhm.
because even when you guys were in the depths of your addiction, you still had people who loved you. You're still human beings, right?
Yeah.
Just because you were lost with whatever had happened, which the majority of the time it's some kind of trauma or something that's happened to us in our life, doesn't mean you're worthless. Not at all. We all get lost. And if there's anyone who listens to this show and says, I've never been lost in my life, I would have to call BS on it because we all
Yeah.
Sure.
get lost, right?
Yeah.
Some just fall into different patterns to handle it, right? Some
Mhm.
people bury their freaking lives into work. They're workaholics. Some
Mhm.
people do it in drugs and alcohol. Some do it in porn, some gambling, some eating, some cleaning. There's so
Yeah.
many ways that people deal with stuff that's going on inside because we don't allow ourselves to feel those feelings.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
trick is we just don't want to get stuck in it, right? Where we do have to use something else to help us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, I was going to tell you a quick story. First, I'll tell you the only math equation that I've ever actually understood is consistent action over time equals trust. Because it doesn't involve numbers. But
That's good because you
I'm
would have
terrible.
messed me up
Yeah,
already.
I'm terrible at math. But that, when someone explained it to me that way, obviously it's very simple, but it made a lot of sense. It's if you can, we can't control what other people are going to believe and do necessarily. All we can do is control what we're going to do, and how we behave. And hopefully, if we do that and we get better, we can just break down those stigmas kind of organically. And I'll give you a for instance. So we live in a nice neighborhood. We have some really great neighbors. Right off the bat, I don't think that those neighbors, I mean, obviously they didn't know that we're both recovering heroin addicts, that I'm a convicted burglar. I went to prison. They didn't all know that. I'm pretty open about everything. I usually will tell people. I don't like go knock on their door and announce it, but
Hand them a
if
flyer.
organic conversation, I
Yeah.
have no problem saying, yeah, this is what happened. And but the other day I text my neighbors, they're out of town, and my weed trimmer broke, and I text my neighbor and asked him if I could borrow his, um, and he says, "Sure, here's my garage code." And um, it still surprises me a little bit when stuff like that happens, especially when people know about my past. Like, wow, he's out of town and just gave me his garage code. And Linda made a joke, like, because we have that relationship with the neighbors, but she's like, you really just gave a convicted felon your garage code, a convicted burglar, and and it's funny, but yeah, like he gave me his garage code. I went over there, got the weed trimmer, used it, and took it back, and that's the kind of stuff that happens when you actually put in the time and you use that equation. Like, be genuine and actually do it, be trustworthy. and do the right things. And over time, people see that, and you'll be trusted, you'll be treated no differently. And that's kind of what's happened. We have that kind of trust from our families and from our friends, um, and it still sometimes amazes me, but it's true.
Yeah. So with that being said, I think more of us need to be open. Like, I used to not be as open about my past and things like I've been through until Addict to Athlete, and also when Drew and I got married. He's taught me a lot to be open, but I think it takes the shame out of it, and that we know we're not that person anymore, and we can be open about it, and then that allows other people to be vulnerable with us too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, it's that trust, right? And when you're open, and correct me if I'm wrong. When you're open, I believe it takes a lot of pressure off of yourself too, right? And
Yeah.
for me, I was holding on a lot of weight on my shoulders, not realizing I was doing it. And it didn't happen when I finally realized. It was just this past January. And I don't know if I shared this with you guys. I got to share stage with Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director, the Other Side Academy, last August at the Dixie Convention Center for our Healing Utah Success Summit. And after the event, I went over to Dave and I said, "Hey, I'd like to sit down and have a meeting with you to talk to you about some stuff." And he goes, "Yeah, let's do it." And because Dave's a very powerful speaker, and that's how I want to be when I get up and speak. And of course, our meeting didn't happen till January. It took quite a few months before he finally had some time, and we made it happen. And when I was in his office, he asked if he could speak openly, and I gave him that permission. And he leaned up on the edge of his chair, and with professionally way, he just kind of like pointed his finger and he's like, "Al, it's time for you to start telling your effing story instead of your wife's story." And he goes, "You will be a more powerful speaker. You will get a message out probably without you." I can't even remember the exact words. And it just so happened to be that same day, Robin Sims, his assistant, was my guest co-host on the show that day. Our guest didn't show. I took Dave's advice. Robin ended up being the host. I was the guest. So I was the guest on my own show.
Yeah.
And I told my story for the very first time, about my 8-year weekend alcohol and cocaine use. And I mean, Robin could see it during the interview. I couldn't see it, of course, and I couldn't feel it till afterwards. But she's like, "Al, I was just watching all this weight just crumble off of you." And I started thinking about it more, and I'm like, how unfair have I been? Guests come on my show and be vulnerable like you guys, and they share a part of their life that they're not proud of, but they're willing to talk about it, right? They're willing to share it. And here I am holding my own story in and not sharing it. And I tell you what, the things that have happened in my life since then have just been amazing. I mean, and of course, I knew Dave was right because he's lived it, right? And he sees it daily with the people that he works with. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to him for getting in my face like that and really opening my eyes, because it has just done wonders in my life. I mean, my wife walked into the studio halfway through the show because she came in to watch me interview our guests, and I was end up being the guest. And with my peripheral vision, I mean, I swear I watched her chin bounce off the floor. She couldn't believe I was sharing my story, because I've always pretty much talked about her journey and what I went through during her journey.
Yeah.
So again, I tip my hat off to individuals like yourself and for being open. And your neighbors, they don't see the old you, they see the new you.
Yeah.
And the energy that you two put off, I mean, how could you not trust you? They don't see the ex you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your story about Dave DeRocher kind of reminded me of something something that's important in finding your potential, during treatment, after treatment, whatever, or just in general in life, is surround yourself with people that hold you accountable, that will tell you stuff like that. Like, when are you going to tell your story? Like, obviously you want a mixture of, you don't want people constantly in your face, do this, do that, but the people that are willing to step up when it really counts and say, what are you doing? And that's hard to commit to have, because you just want things to feel easy, and you want to be surrounded by people that are just light and fun, and you can have that as well. Um but part of my success, I think, after getting out of prison is, eventually I started bringing people into my life that told me the truth, and that said some things that kind of hurt at the moment, um, and maybe I even got mad and rejected it in the moment, but it's set in, and I thought about it, and so that's something that you just have to commit to. Surround yourself with people that, one, are successful, the winners, and two, will tell you the truth and help you be successful.
I agree with that. Linda, do you have something to touch on that?
I think it's also important to be one of those people that will call out someone else, like he did for you, right? Like how that changed your life. I think it's uncomfortable to call people out, but I think we need to be those people too.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I admired about Dave is he asked for my permission to speak openly,
Mhm.
right? And I've told other people, I'm like, yeah, when he started doing that, man, I was putting the bricks up. I'm like,
Yeah.
who the hell are you to talk to me this way? And then about halfway up, I realized, wait a minute, I gave this man permission. The least I could do is hear him out, right? And I'm so glad that I did, because it was my ego that was putting up the bricks, right? It wasn't it. It's still me, but yeah, it's my ego putting up the bricks, and we do that way too much. And I love what both of you said, because it's not that we're there to hurt someone's feelings, right? We're there to hopefully open their eyes a little bit wider
Mhm.
and realize, because you guys have lived it. You lived it. You're not just pulling something out of your back pocket and pulling a piece of paper out and reading something to them. You guys have lived it. So
Yeah.
you know what it takes. And you've had people do the same thing to you, and now you're just paying it forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, another important thing is people that can teach you boundaries. Like, boundaries are such a huge thing, for especially for us, like recovering addicts and alcoholics, is we're not good at boundaries typically, and so that's a learned skill, to be able to say no, or to be able to um, just put those boundaries in place. And actually, Linda's one of the ones that kind of taught me a lot about boundaries, and I don't think she even realized it, like, but I'll just, if I can tell the story. On our first date, I tried to kiss her on our first date, and she pulled away, and that told me something, that told me something about her. um it told me that she had boundaries, and that she held those boundaries, and that she respects herself enough to do that, and it told me that she was different than some of the other girls that I had been trying to go after, and so um since that time, I've really tried to learn about boundaries, and put boundaries in place and hold those boundaries. That's the most important thing, right?
Mhm.
Anyone can say boundaries, but if you're not, if you're not holding them, then they're not boundaries. You got to teach
Yeah.
people how to treat you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with holding your own boundaries before you can with other people, right?
Yeah, your own personal
Being
boundaries
true
too.
to your own personal boundaries is a good start, because boundaries are hard. Boundaries are hard for so many people to set and hold. But start with yourself, I think.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I'm gonna reverse it too, just a little bit, if you can actually say it's reversing. Us on the other side, we have to set our boundaries too, right? It took me 8 years of my wife's addiction to figure that out. I
Yeah.
heard him talk about it a lot when I went to recovery things with her and AA meetings and different things like that, not realizing we have to set boundaries too, and we have to stay in that box. You cannot step out of that box. And when you start having those boundaries, I don't know how it works, the law of the universe or whatever it may be, but it seems like it's a positive things for both sides, right? Because
Yeah.
now where both people stand, and you're not they know they cannot step inside your box, and you cannot step inside theirs. And when you're having those bad moments, they know where you stand, right? It's like I used to tell my wife, I will be here for you 100%. I will help you any way I possibly can, as long as you are sober. As soon as you're not sober, all that's off the table. And
Mhm.
it was so hard for me, right? So hard. However, it's got to be tougher for those who are parents and it's
Yes.
their children, right? I mean, I've had probably a half a dozen phone calls of people who have had kids, and they're like, "Al, what do you suggest?" And I'm like, "Well, if it was your spouse, I could probably give you some pretty good tools. However, I've not played in that ballpark. I've not been in that sandbox. This is your child. I can boot my wife out. I can divorce my wife. You're not able to do that when it's your child. So, however, I do have resources that I could give you to talk to the right people, right?
Mhm.
Because I can't give them the same advice of things that I use to help me with my wife's stuff. And I'm a slow learner. It took me 8 years to figure it out. But, however, I finally figured some of it out. Yeah, so it's a lot different. And I love that you guys brought that up, the boundaries, because it is on both sides. It's just my belief. You have to have that on both sides, and it does pay off. It helps both individuals.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's actually more important for someone who's not in recovery or doesn't struggle with addiction to set a boundary with someone in active addiction, because we need that. We need people to set those boundaries with us so that we can change. Sometimes that's what we need to change.
Yeah.
And doesn't it help you guys look at that too as, oh my gosh, they really do care,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because instead of us throwing the daggers like I did at my wife so many times, right? That wasn't positive. That was all negative. However, when I stuck to my boundaries, as hard as it was, it turned out to be positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Exactly.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's hard to view it that way as the addict in the moment, as, oh, look how much they love me. Like when my
Yeah.
parents, after the third time I was arrested, finally decided to leave me in jail instead of bail me out. It's hard to view that as love. But now I'm like, that's the most loving thing they could have ever done for me,
Yeah.
is to leave me there. Um, so yeah, I would talk to parents a lot on the phone when I worked in the recovery industry, and they would ask for advice. What do I do? And it's so easy for me to sit here and say, you got to tell them no, you got to hold boundaries, you got to kick them out, like, because I know that's what worked for me, but it's so much easier said than done, right? I've never been in their shoes as the parent, um, but ultimately that's kind of what has to happen, and I would explain it to them in this way, like you can, say, just for the sake of an example, they're struggling with the idea of whether or not to kick them out of the house. Like, you can either kick them out, and it's kind of a 50-50 shot. They're going to sink or swim. Um, or you can let them continue to stay there, and it's pretty much 100% chance they're going to continue to sink. So you just got to kind of play the odds. Um, but it's scary, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that you guys brought up before we started recording, and I want to make sure I have it down right. So, long-term recovery doesn't mean you're going to have constant happiness, right? Because life is going to throw you curveballs no matter what. It's going to punch you in the gut because that's part of life, right? I
Mhm.
mean, God gave us all these emotions, and we're here to feel all these emotions. And we talked about it a little bit at the start of the show of being able to get the tools to learn how to deal with it, right? And go through those emotions, because it's okay if we're upset. It's okay if we're depressed a little bit. It's okay if we cry. The secret of it is not to stay stuck there to where we end up in that stagnant water, as we talked about earlier. So is that, I mean, would you guys just elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think, and I don't know, because I'm not in, I guess, that realm. Because my wife, even probably 3-4 months into recovery, she's just like, oh my gosh, life is so amazing, right? And then the first time something happened to her, it scared the living crap out of me, because I'm like, here it comes. She's gonna turn that corner, and she's gonna go the opposite direction. However, she had the tools to learn how to keep herself from going that direction.
And that's the key, you know. I think a common misconception is when you go to treatment or you start going to AA or whatever your recovery path is, that you're going for a cure for uh, depression or anxiety, or you're going for a cure for triggers or cravings, you know. But that's not the case, you know. The goal essentially is to be able to learn to live with those things and be able to manage those things as they come up, and you gain tools to be able um, to find happiness in spite of those things, you know. And you know, the symptoms kind of lessen over time, for sure, if you're actively engaged in doing these things and getting better. And but I'm diagnosed with depression. I'm always going to have depression, you know, but now I just know how to deal with it. I know what to do when that comes, you know. I know if I'm feeling down, okay, I need to get up and get on the exercise bike, or I need to go for a walk, or I need to do this or that, you know. Or if I have a craving, I need to just get up and move, or I need to call someone, you know. And those tools that you learn, you know, they can give you those tools for your tool belt and treatment, but you got to practice them. You know, they're only as good as the person using them. You know, if you're not picking them up, if they're just sitting there collecting dust, then they're of no use. They're not going to help. And then, you know, and then people want to look back and blame the treatment center or blame AA. Well, that didn't work. Well, now you didn't use it right, you know.
That's like pulling out a screwdriver to put a nail in some 2x4s, right?
Right.
uh,
Yeah, I think also just allowing ourselves to feel our emotions, so we can get past them instead of stuffing it. Because if you stuff it, it's just going to come out eventually in a way you don't want them to. And I think for me, learning to do that has taught me to stay calm in the chaos.
yeah. And I love that you put it that way, you know, because I I used to have a really bad anger issue. And I grew up around it, right? As soon as something didn't go your way, you threw a fit. I watched my dad throw tools, kick things, hit things, throw all kinds of stuff, you know, when things didn't go your way. And I just assumed that's how you lived life. When things didn't go your way, you threw a temper tantrum. And in my mid-20s, I ended up hurting someone, and it was a woman. And when she's laying on the floor and I'm looking at her all curled up in a ball, I'm like, the hell am I doing? This is not who I want to be, right? I mean, here I am letting the best of my anger get a hold of me. And it's because what you said, Linda, I stuffed it. Everything that was bugging me, I just buried deeper, deeper, and deeper and deeper. And however, it's like a volcano, you know, finally I would just erupt. And when I erupt, my blinders were on. I didn't even realize what I was doing most of the time. And then after I calmed down, I realized I put my fist through a door like 20 times and my hand and knuckles were covered in splinters, or I put it through a window, or I kicked a hole in the wall, or I ripped a phone off the wall back when we used to have phones on the wall. You
Right.
know? And I went through 6 months of therapy to learn how to control my temper. And Drew, you even touched on it, is recognizing it, right?
Mhm.
And that is something that literally scared the crap out of me when my wife was in the depths of her addiction, because I could feel those blinders closing in. And it was scaring me because of what I had gone through in my 20s, right? Seeing a person that I cared about laying on the floor, curled up in a ball. And all I'm seeing, my gosh, if I get to that point, I could hurt this person that I love, right? I'm angry. However, I'm letting it get the best of me. And it was scaring me. It was scaring the living crap out of me. And yeah, those are the times either I had to kick her out or I had to leave, because it was scaring me. But also to be able to talk about it, right? Or know the tools, the proper tools to use that would help me. And gosh, with you, being addict to athlete, I mean, the gym helped me so much.
Yeah.
I'm an early riser and hitting the gym early in the morning and, throwing some weights around, or just getting on the treadmill or the elliptical or stairs or whatever. It helped me so much to get rid of those emotions.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
it's me too. Movement, I think, it just helps you metabolize those emotions. Absolutely. That's, for a long time, that was my only skill. Like my only coping skill was movement, to get past and through those emotions, until I actually went to, like, was serious about therapy. Then I learned other tools, but
Yeah.
for real, that was the only way.
Yeah. Um, I've been sitting here thinking about um, something that's helped me, and unfortunately, this really didn't sink in until like the last 6 months. And it's the difference between discipline and motivation, right? And I mean, I guess I've always kind of known what it is, but I've never really internalized it. You know, I've been, all these years, I pray and I hope for motivation. Please help me feel motivation. I want to, essentially, I want to feel like doing it, but discipline is doing it even if you don't want to, right? And that's a practice skill as well. And something, it finally just dawned on me one day, like I'm sitting here praying for motivation and asking my God to give me the strength to want to do it, but I've got to put in the effort and start doing it even when I don't want to, whether that's getting up in the morning and going to the gym or whatever it is. um, if you're laying around and praying for motivation and just waiting for motivation and waiting to feel like wanting to do it, then you're going to be waiting a while. You've got to do it even when you don't want to, and that's so hard, but it's empowering when you do it, when you finally do it. And that kind of brings motivation. Like, oh, that felt good to do something, even though I didn't want to do it. And then you start to kind of feel motivated to do it.
Yeah. I would have to agree, because there's some mornings, I set my alarm every day for 5, but however, I'm usually up before the alarm goes off. And Monday was that way for me, right? Monday I woke up like at 4:45. I'm like, oh great, 15 more minutes. Laid there, alarm goes off. I shut the alarm off. I'm laying there in bed and I'm like, I really don't want to go to the gym today. I really don't. About 4:45 rolls around. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna go. I think I shut my eyes for about 5 more minutes, woke back up, and I'm like, what the hell else am I going to do? I don't have to be to work for another couple hours. Okay, I'm going. And those are the days that seem to be my best workout days.
Mhm.
It's crazy. The
Yeah.
days I don't want to get out of bed and go work out end up usually being my best workout days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Linda brought up something yesterday. Actually, she said sometimes though, you also have to have the discipline to know when to take a break.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd get stuck in this mindset of like, I gotta go because of discipline, you know. But if your body needs a break, you have to listen to it, you know, and be honest with yourself about why you really are taking a break, you know. Don't use it as an excuse like, oh, I gotta have the discipline to take a break too, you know. Just listen to your body and be honest with yourself. And I mean, I took a break the last couple of days because I wasn't getting enough sleep, you know. And my allergies were so bad, my face and my hands were puffy, you know. And I was so like, oh, I can't take a break, I can't get out of this habit of going to the gym. But I finally just had to listen to myself, like, okay, like, it's okay, like, you're worn out, you've got really bad allergies, it's okay to take a break. Just get back, you know, when you're caught up in sleep and you're feeling better.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Listen to your mind and listen to your body.
Yeah.
Right. And have an honest conversation with them, not, you know, be able to recognize when you're lying to yourself and you're justifying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge, being honest with
Yeah.
yourself about it. And I think doing things like going back to the discipline, doing them when we don't want to also builds our confidence, and that can translate into other areas of our life. If it's with the gym and you don't want to go but you still do, I think we learn to do that in other areas of our life as well.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's I don't know, to me it's the sandwich, right? It's you put it in between the two slices of bread and it just seems to work out.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So what was it for both of you guys that finally just opened up your eyes and you said, you know what? I'm done. I'm done digging this hole. It's not getting me anywhere. Time to put down the shovel.
For me, it was, uh, gosh, I had a few ODs that didn't change me. What gave me the motivation is my mom had open heart surgery and I didn't show up for a couple of days for her. And then when I did, I showed up high and she went back down a little, like some crazy things with her heart happened when she saw me like that. And that was just the end for me. Like, I have to make a change in my life. I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
Mine, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
I've had a few of those moments, really, you know, but the initial one that kind of sparked my long-term recovery, I was a year into my 3.5 year prison sentence. And even during that first year, I'd still had used substances a few times here and there that were in the prison, and the old behaviors were still there. I was still a liar, a cheat, and a thief, you know. And I was in the state prison in Gunnison in the Hope program there. Um, and I was in a leadership position. And anyway, I broke a rule, you know, nothing major, but like when you're in a leadership position in that program, they hold you to a higher standard. So I broke one of the rules and I received some consequences that in the context of being in prison were pretty harsh. You know, they took away like my TV and my phone calls and my pretty much anything that made prison bearable. And you know, I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning and clean for 3 hours every day, and 5 pages of journaling, and all, you know, all this stuff that just made it prison within prison, basically. And I had to do that for 60 days. That was kind of my sentence, you know. And I'm a huge San Francisco Giants fan, and that meant that I was going to miss the Giants playing in the World Series, you know. And and obviously that's not the only reason, but for whatever reason, that's when it was enough. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, where I was just like, okay, gosh, I'm so tired of me being who I am getting in the way of my own happiness, you know. And something just the flips or the switch flipped in me, you know. And I became willing to start being honest with myself and making real changes. And I finally understood the idea of it's going to take time. You know, I can't get all these things tomorrow just because I want them right now. And I have pure intentions to be good doesn't mean I'm going to get it right away, and so that was it. That was the moment where things started getting better, and
I
it's
love
been
it.
a process ever since.
I love both of those. And Linda, you probably see this, being a coach. When we're talking about this process, right? I mean, basically the process is everyday life. It's just not people that's coming into recovery and not being able to come out of it at a snap of a finger. And I'm sure you see people come in and you're coaching them, and to see the joy on their face, let's say when they first come in, they can only do 5 push-ups. Then a month down the road, they can do 15. And then 6 months down the road, they can do 50. It's that process, right? So it's bettering ourselves, working on our long-term recovery, whatever it may be in life, a goal to give ourselves the patience and the time to work through it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think for those of us that struggle with addiction, we just want that instant gratification, and if we don't get there immediately, we give up sometimes, and we just have to stick through, and it takes time a lot.
Yeah. With you saying that instant gratification, I've heard this quite a bit, and my wife's talked about it quite a bit. You don't ever get that same high that you did the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And when she started really getting in the depths of her addiction with her drinking, I mean, she drank as quick as possible because she wanted to get that feeling.
Yeah.
She never ever got that feeling, yet she continued to do the same thing, just like I continue to do the same thing with the same results.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Always chasing it.
Yeah.
yeah, you're always chasing it, and you never get it though, right? I mean, you don't get it. Even like with my 8 years of cocaine and alcohol, I mean, the first time I snorted a line of cocaine, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in love with this stuff. This is I mean, I just love the whole feeling."
This is the
And
answer that I've
this
been
is the
looking
answer, right? It's like, "Oh."
for.
And I didn't do it every day, and, it was like every once in a while we'd having parties and things like that, and someone would bring some over, and I got that same feeling, right? Because it would be periods of time. However, when I started doing it every single Friday and Saturday, I was doing the same thing she was doing with the alcohol. I mean, before I just did a line, man, and I'd be really good for an hour, hour and a half. It got to where I did a line. It's like 15 minutes. Oh, hell, I'll do another one. 15
Yeah.
minutes later, do another one. Because I was looking for that same type of feeling. I was chasing it, and I never did get it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For me, that's why I love running and exercise, because with running, I get that endorphin high every time. And it's not like I know I'm gonna get it. So it's comforting to have that.
And delayed and earned gratification is so much sweeter.
Yeah.
That gratification that you worked for, like running, and you
Mhm.
put in the work, it's just so much better.
I would have to agree. And thanks for putting it that way, Drew, because yeah, I 100% agree. I don't know if our listeners do, but I agree. So, gosh, we have been into this, I think, an hour, a little over an hour already, which is crazy. This stuff goes by so fast,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that
does.
did.
right?
Mhm.
What is it? I know both you guys have a message. What is it that you want our listeners to gain from your story and with what you shared with us today?
For me, I think just like I said earlier, you're worth so much more, and you have so much more potential than you realize. And it starts with letting go of that negative self-talk and letting go of those beliefs that we've told ourselves for years, and just start small. Do little things, little accomplishments, and count each win, and you can just grow from there.
Yeah.
I love it.
Mine would be, first of all, be patient and don't expect everything back right away, and don't expect easy straight all the time. And also be willing to go into your own mind and challenge your own self theories about yourself, what you can and can't do, and start to kind of debunk those theories. um, that's what I've done slowly over the last 10 years, is debunk my own self theories. I can't do this and I can't do that. It's crap.
Yeah, I agree. You know, just so our listeners know, I want them to know what you guys are doing now. And this goes to show why we picked the topic that we picked for today's show. You guys are doing amazing things now, right? I mean, you guys are both into real estate, is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just left my career. I was doing business development for a substance abuse treatment program for almost 7 years. And I left um, because, mostly I just wanted to kind of be my own boss, um, and we're doing real estate, and we're in the process of kind of starting a nonprofit. Um, but when I left and we were going into real estate, not that there's anything wrong with just doing real estate, but I knew I had this gift of having a story, having wisdom from it, and being able to connect with people through my story, and I didn't want to let that go to waste, And so something that we're kind of trying to do, one, with our real estate is I I look back to when I bought my first house a few years ago at age 35, and goes back to that self theory thing of I didn't think that I could because I didn't make enough money. My credit score wasn't good enough. I'm a felon. I didn't have enough savings, all this stuff that I just kind of heard and believed. And then I talked to one guy that I knew that's in recovery, and he's like, dude, you could buy a house right now. And I did 45 days later. And so what that did for me, obviously I got a house, but it also kind of shattered that little belief of I can't do this. And it got me thinking of what else am I thinking I can't do that I can, you know? Um, and so our goal, obviously, not going to try to hide the fact, yes, we want to sell real estate, but we could have chosen to do that any number of ways. I want to help people that are in the shoes that I was in a few years ago. They're post treatment. They've got all of these therapeutic tools that they know and that they've learned, but a lot of people in recovery after treatment in AA and all that don't really learn a lot of adult skills, and I'm not even just talking about real estate, like we want to help people with all kinds of different things, like, oh, I can't get a good job because I'm a felon, or I used to do drugs, or I can't get certified in this, or I can't start my own business, and so we formed a lot of partnerships, or we're in the process of forming these partnerships within the community. And one of them's with a credit repair company, and one of them, there's a law firm that offers how to start a business 101, these free classes in the community, and trying to get people plugged into these things and help break down some of those barriers and some of those lies of I can't do this, I can't do that, and let us help you figure that out and get past those things. And so we're still in the beginning phases of kind of getting that off the ground. We are doing real estate, and I posted one thing on Facebook about my story of buying my first house and my negative self beliefs, and that stirred up already like a few people from the recovery community that like we're interested, and like we're in that same spot of like, well, I don't think that I can either, and come to find out they're way more prepared than I was 3 years ago, like like, are you kidding me? You're like more prepared than 80% of first time home buyers, like yeah, there's just a lot of false information out there. Like it's more attainable than you think, not just buying a home, but a lot of things. So
Yeah.
That's so good to know. Linda, did you have something?
Yeah, just also I think buying a home, that for a lot of people is like one of the biggest purchases you'll ever make, and it's very emotional and draining. And I think we both have we have good skills to help people through that part of it. We're not just there to sell them a home, but help them through the emotional part of it, like the social. It's hard and it's draining.
Yeah.
so our goal kind of, I mean, we could have kind of gone after some low hanging fruit, people that are already in a very good financial position and have great credit, but we've chosen to take on this population that maybe they aren't in a good place, but we can help them build a roadmap to get there. Like this, a lot of people just don't know what to do, where even start, as far as cleaning up their credit or whatever, like we can, we'll have like a one-stop shop where we can help you build a roadmap and give you even maybe a time frame of like, do this for this long and you'll be in good shape, and
Yeah.
and maybe we get to help them in a real estate transaction down the road. That's not our expectation on the front end. Our goal and our expectation is just to help someone get their life back on track. So
I love it. We need individuals like yourselves out there doing that. I mean, are you guys working with Clean Slate Utah at all?
not yet, like I said, we're kind of in this the beginning phases, and we're still reaching out and building these types of connections,
Okay. Well, when you're ready, let me know, because we're big supporters of Clean Slate Utah. I know Destiny Garcia very, very well. And matter of fact, she's going to be a vendor at our event in October, but when you guys are ready, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do an introduction for you. She's an amazing, amazing woman. And I'm so blessed and grateful that I had the honor of meeting her and having her on the show. And we've built a relationship, and yeah, they worked tirelessly to help my wife out. And there was just some things on hers that they couldn't do. It's not a magic thing. They just can't wave a wand, and there's certain processes
Sure.
and different things they can and cannot do. However, they are helping a lot of individuals like yourselves, of helping them get their feet back on the ground and heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we'd love to
Awesome.
meet her.
Yeah.
Just let me know when you're ready, and I'm more than happy to do an introduction
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks, Al.
to
Thank
help
you.
you guys out any way that I can. Well, is there anything else you guys would like to share before we end the show?
Not for me. I just want to thank you for what you do and all your passion and inspiration. And I'm so glad that we got to meet and get to know each other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's clear that you're very passionate about what you're doing, and it's infectious.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, it is definitely is a passion of mine. And I'm actually going to be on Good Things Utah on Monday,
Sweet.
talk about stigma.
Oh, great.
They're gonna bring me on every quarter.
Oh, great.
I was debating on what topic I wanted to do, and that little voice kept popping in my head: do stigma. So that's what I'm gonna. I mean, I get 3 minutes, and 3 minutes goes by extremely quick.
Right.
However, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it, and then I'll be back on again in October. And yeah,
That's
so
great. We'll have to
you
watch
guys-
for it.
We'll
yeah, I
definitely
hope you guys get a chance to watch it. And yeah, and I mean, while you guys get your stuff going, I can connect you with Savvy as well at Good Things Utah, to get yourselves out there. So I've built some really
taking you up on that.
well, and I'm more than happy to help. I've built some really, really good connections and relationships with individuals in the recovery community, and it's people doing what you want to do, right? It's people out there helping other people,
Yeah.
and it's not that there's anything in it for them. I mean, yeah, we all have a business and we want to make money and we want to make a living. However, the number one priority is how can we help an individual? All that other stuff will come, right?
Yeah.
As long as
Right.
we're focused in the right direction.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure having the both of you, and thank you for being so vulnerable and opening up. And I did pretty good at this show. I didn't get really emotional where I shed any tears. A lot of times I shed tears in my show. But
We saw
I
you shed tears last time we met with you.
yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I shared you with you. My wife thinks I'm sexy when I cry, so I cry all the time now.
Yeah. I guess today's not that day.
Today's just not that day. Too much going on or something. But yeah, again, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon and to spend it with us. And I just want to say thank you too to all our sponsors and all our guests and you know all our listeners. None of this would happen if it wasn't for you guys. And it's just amazing. I love doing these shows. Hopefully, there will be a time in the near future where I'm going to be doing this every day because that's what my passion is. And just sitting down with amazing individuals like yourselves and just sit down and have a conversation about life. And it doesn't matter how deep in the muck you get, man. Yeah, we need help, right? I mean, we need to have some support and grab a hold of one of the ropes, man, and get yourself out of it because it is possible. And life ends up being so flipping amazing. It's
Yeah,
just
it does. It's much
incredible,
better.
For sure.
right? Yeah, so much better. Or as my youngest daughter used to say, more better. It's a lot
Yeah.
more better.
Way more better.
Way more better.
Yeah.
And before we sign off, I'd like to throw something out to our listeners. Guys, we didn't do our ARC, our Addiction Resource Collective networking event. We're not going to do it in July because of the holidays, but we will be doing it the first Tuesday in August. So if anybody's interested in that, we want to bring people in who fall under the addiction umbrella. You just don't have to be a recovery center. You don't even have to be someone who's gone through or is in long-term recovery. You know, we've had people come in and do sound bathing. We've had meditation, trauma, all kinds of different types of individuals come in. And what it is, it's about building the relationships. So if you guys are interested, reach out to me through Messenger. Let me know so we can connect more people, because the more we build this and build our relationships, the bigger our ball of yarn gets, the more our voices are heard, and the better chance we have of making some changes in society and in our community. And I'm going to throw one more thing out there too. Guys, be watching my social media because after lots of people reaching out to us from our Healing Utah Success Summit that we did on April 15th, we've been asked when we're going to hold another one. We were going to do our best to hold one in Layton. Unfortunately, the only rooms they have left at the Davis Convention Center are too small for what we're looking for. So we are going to go back to the Miller campus, the Free Enterprise building. Mark your calendars, October 7th. It's a Saturday. We're going to pack the place. I mean, people were very inspired in our one in April. We've got some great speakers, Mallory Roosh, Curtis Marsh, Brad Neufeld, myself will be speaking. We've got some great vendors that are going to be coming in, sponsors as well. Come out and be inspired. And again, you don't have to be in the addiction realm. This is stuff like what we talked about on the show today. It's inspiration for everyone. And I mean, for everyone. You don't have to be going through any kind of addiction or long-term recovery to be inspired. That's for doggone sure. So April 7th, be watching the social media. And yeah, we'll be getting some more information about it. Thank you again, Drew and Linda, for your time. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you to all our listeners again. And remember this, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.